Hi, and welcome back to Rolling Hills Soul Care Podcast. My name is Jazzy, and I'm here with Chuck. Hi, Chuck.
Hi, Jazzy.
There have been many requests for us to learn, and by many, I mean at least one, to learn more about ourselves, and by ourselves, we mean you. So, Chuck, I have a question for you.
Another question?
Yeah, I'm just going to keep coming up with these great questions. We just want to know what your favorite fruit is. Your favorite fruit. I know you've got one.
Do I have a favorite? Yeah, I was... I won't say the biblical answer.
Oh, come on.
No.
I was setting you up.
No,
man.
I know, but that's the softball. We'll just... No, actually, if I had to pick a favorite fruit, it would be a peach. Yeah, real. Summer's coming, and peaches are my favorite. It's just there's something about a fresh peach that...
I agree with you mightily, and I apologize because you glanced over and saw my face, and I was shaking my head because what I was trying to do was get the song Peaches, 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 Peaches out of my head because I have a young-ish human male living in my house, and that is what we think of when we think peaches now. So, but I agree, peaches are great, especially when they're like nice and ripe and ready, and you can like squeeze them and tell that they're, oh, wait a minute. Chuck, the name of this blog is What Comes Out When You Are Squeezed.
You worked that in very nicely.
You like that? Thanks. Yeah. Would you like to read this for us?
I will, yeah. This is blog post number 108 for those who like to read them. Yeah, you've already, the title, What Comes Out When You Are Squeezed.
I am on the edge of my seat.
There you go.
For this.
So in January and February, our teaching team took us on an insightful journey through a section of the Bible commonly referred to as the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5, 6, and 7. While there were dozens of exceptional teaching points during this teaching series, I'm just going to focus on one for the purpose of today's blog. In Matthew 7, 13 and 14, Jesus says, "Enter by the narrow gate. For the gate is wide, and the way is easy that leads to destruction. And those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow, and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few." Pastor Aaron unpacked these verses in a particularly helpful way by defining what narrow meant in the original language. It wasn't a reference to tiny. Instead, it conveyed something that was being constricted, pressured, or squeezed. As he always does, Aaron then took that information and helped us better understand the intentionality that is required in pursuing the way of the kingdom. But he said something else that really made me reflect on my spiritual life and my witness of that life to others. When this world squeezes us, does Jesus come out? Does the character of his kingdom come out? As I thought about that, I remembered a time when I reached for a tube of toothpaste and grabbed a tube of Aquifer ointment instead. After squeezing the tube, what came out on my toothbrush was not at all what I was expecting.
Okay, gross.
That memory made me think of the many times I've been squeezed, constricted, and pressured by things in this life, and what came out of me was not what I would have hoped for or what others may have been expecting. When this world squeezes us, does Jesus come out, or does something altogether different come out? And what does it look like for Jesus to come out of us when we're squeezed? Those things would include love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. All of those things are found in Galatians 5:22 and 23. But how about obedience, trust, humbleness, mercy, and justice? And you can likely think of many other things that demonstrate a life and a heart that are deeply connected to Jesus. Which is why I'm writing about this in a soul care blog. One definition of soul care is our drive toward building a life deeply connected to God and living from the overflow of that life. And that definition came from soulcare.com. Soul care is about being intentional, about deepening our relationship with Jesus so he can fill us to overflowing. And I've quoted from this book before, but I close with this paragraph. I love the imagery that Alan Fadling uses in his book, The Unhurried Leader. He references Ezekiel 47, where God gave the prophet a vision of a future temple out of which flows an ever-expanding river. That river flows on out through the wilderness into the Dead Sea and heals what is broken, refreshes what is dry, and brings life to what is dead. The imagery is of God in his temple, providing an everlasting and ever-increasing source of life-giving water. God is the source, not us. But as we spend time with him and deepen our relationship with him, we can be filled with that living water and allow it to flow out of us to others, especially when we're being squeezed.
Okay, so good stuff. Really good stuff, Chuck. Thank you so much.
I think it's the first time you said that, so it took a long time to get you to say that.
How many blogs are we? That many podcasts. Well, no, your words are always inspiring and good and making me think. The reason I was so quick about this or so glib about this is because it did bring to mind a story of my own. If you may indulge me, I promise it'll get there. But a couple of days ago, we were having a family dinner, and my mom has a little box of cards out on her table. One of those, like you pull up the card and it has a question on it, and then everybody can go around the table and answer it. You know, shout out if we're old enough to remember the Ungame, but it's that kind of thing where you just kind of get to know your people better. And one of the questions on the card was, give us one word to describe your parent. And I mean, we're all multi-generational sitting there, right? And so I know better than to make a joke about my mom on this one, right? Because there's lots of wonderful words to describe my mom because she's a wonderful person. So I gave a sincere answer. I don't remember what it was because, like I said, there's a lot of wonderful words. And then we all turn and we look to my child and we're just dying. We can't wait to hear what he's going to say. And I will say, I really enjoy my relationship with my kid. We have a good time. We joke and we laugh and we're honest with each other and fairly open and stuff. But I know he likes to have a good time, but still, we just shared this really profound spiritual experience of baptism together and stuff. And so I was like, ooh, maybe he's going to say something like Jesus follower or, mentor. I don't know what I was hoping. Wouldn't that just be a miracle if that happened? But I knew I was going to get a joke, something more like, terrible cook or exceptionally lazy, because those things are also very, very true. And so we all turn to him and he's ready. He's so proud of himself. He is bursting at the seams. He keeps saying, I've got it. I've got the perfect word. And we know it's going to be good. And we all brace ourselves for this bomb that's going to drop. And he says, Mommy is vulgar. And we all just stared at him, and everybody around the table thinks it's great, and I'm dying. I just look at him like the real question that I'm thinking is, oh my goodness, where did that come from? Because I can see how we have fun and stuff, but I'm also, really? That's the one? That's the
word that came to mind? Yes.
Yeah, and so I was trying to figure it out. Probably people who know me are laughing right now. I'm probably way more crass than I realize, or something like that. But the best I could figure out was, we're in one of those ages where, we're in the young pre-adolescent stages of things, and there's a certain level of humor that young human males tend to find amusing when we reach those particular areas, right? And so I'm kind of taking it upon myself. We're still having fun, but I also want to, protect the kid, and I want him to know, like, what's appropriate when we in various places and what's safe at home, what's too much of a line all the time. Like, all those different things that you have to teach your kids. And I guess just the pure delight and joy of hearing his mom say random things turned it into mom's crass and mom's vulgar. and I'm sitting there and even though I have that, I have that story, that explanation, I know like my intentions in my heart, and I know what I was trying to do with whatever these conversations were that brought him there. I know that God knows my intentions and God knows why I was doing that. But still, I got squeezed and that's what came out. it just reminds me, like, no matter whenever we're in the presence, wherever we're in other people's company, we are always being viewed and we're always creating this impression. And that was a hard lesson to learn because I wasn't even under pressure. I was just exuding and not even being squeezed.
That would be fun to sit with him and ask, so what does vulgar mean to you?
Oh, that's the other thing. I thought I asked him, I was like, maybe he doesn't know what vulgar means. And nope, he had a real good handle on it. So,
okay.
Yep, there you go.
All right. Well, there's a whole side of you that I need to know more about.
Now we know.
We'll do another blog series on.
There's other people in this room looking at you saying, hey, I'll tell you all about it.
Jazzy the Vulgar. Okay.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's my Viking name.
But
I don't have a question. This is like an open-ended but. So I heard it after I said it. So hang on. I got to go back. We're just going to leave it in just for the fun of validating everything we just said. I don't have like a point or a question. It's just all this big, wide.
But
whoa.
What's interesting, and I think other people will go there as well, as we read these words, that's what popped into your head, and that was an experience that happened to you recently, and that's often the case with us. And so sometimes what comes out of us is directly out of our mouths. We say something or do something that isn't in the character that of Jesus.
Yeah, like you said, you say something and you're like, oh, that's not what I thought I was going to say.
I wouldn't have expected that to come out of you. But other times, in this case, it was how did he describe you? And while that's a different type of squeezing, and so you're seeing a description, whether it's, and I would say it's an inaccurate one, but
that's nice. I'll take it.
But when you hear that, and anytime we hear something from others that we're like, but that's not how I want to be perceived, or even that's not how I intended to be perceived. If that's how I'm being perceived, then that's an opportunity for
self-reflection.
Okay. Do I need to do anything differently? And sometimes you don't. Sometimes that perception's wrong. But how does one then help correct that misperception if it exists? Or many times, how do I? And I don't hear any of this for you. So this is now deviating from you and your child to a situation where you hear something from somebody, or somebody says something about you that is hurtful and you don't think is true. Telling somebody that they're wrong is not usually a successful way to rebut that and change their perception.
That, yes.
So what do we need to do? And there's where some of these things of patience, kindness, love, coming out of us, to the best of our ability, we're going to demonstrate through a flawed human body. We're going to try to demonstrate the character of Jesus. And that's not always going to be done perfectly. And it's not always going to be received well.
That's a good point.
If it's not received well, simply because they didn't want to hear the message, that's a different problem. But I notice I am most not how I want to be when I am driving alone in my car, because I say things to other drivers that I would never say if they could actually hear me. And I think, why is that? That's a reflection of my heart. And when I take time to stop, it bothers me. So that's an area, here I've confessed, that's
all right. You're angry, I'm vulgar. It's cool.
I am working on that. And that is when I'm squeezed by somebody, cutting into my lane or taking too long to get going out of a stoplight or whatever the horrible driving infraction.
Yeah. It's definitely horrible.
If I'm that quick to anger, that's a real indicator to me. That's what's going on in your heart, and if I will allow that to erupt simply because I don't think anybody's going to hear it or see it, God sees it, and it's not what He called me to be. I mean, there are times where somebody may do something that gets the adrenaline flowing because they almost caused an accident, and those things can cause you to.
That's when you can
get scared, and it still doesn't make it right, but
Right.
you can be scared. But most of the time, I'm just annoyed, and that's a terrible excuse. So anyway, it's just an example.
Well, I mean, you took us all the way back to the reservoir.
Yeah.
That we talked about, many weeks, months ago, and like what we are filled with. Hopefully, whatever we are filled with, we're going to overflow with it.
Correct.
And so, this idea of it being the pursuit, like to be connected to God and to be filled with the things of God, not just Bible verses or
right.
the chosen episodes or something, but
right.
the actual fruits that we're talking about, the actual experiences or the actual things that are listed in the Bible, our emotions and those good things. If we're filled with that, hopefully that's what spills out.
Well, and that's what God's calling. I frequently go back to this passage because it's so encouraging. I've had the privilege of going to Israel, and the area around the Dead Sea is aptly named. It is barren, and it is only, I believe, geographically 15 miles from Jerusalem, which is, and it's the Dead Sea is low. The surface of that is like 1,400 feet below sea level. Jerusalem sits somewhere around 3,000 feet above sea level, so there's a good height difference in those 15 miles. But it's barren, and it's really interesting. I've stood on a hill where you can see the city of Jerusalem still behind you, about 2 miles behind you, but looking east are hills with just grass, leading out to a desert. And Ezekiel 47 says that water flows out of the temple in Jerusalem. Through work that God does, He manages to create a path now toward the Dead Sea. And as the water flows, the most interesting thing to me is not that it becomes ever increasing, it's that it brings life to whatever it touches, including the Dead Sea, which it is restored to a freshwater lake. And I think that imagery is what God has called each of us. We have people we are surrounded by in our neighborhoods, at work or schools, or who are dead. And Jesus says this water that springs up within you as a well is overflowing, and that's what should be overflowing to the point that we bring life. And it's not we do it, we bring Him,
right.
And it's His life that we bring. And what an opportunity. And when I can so easily see that if that barren land is brought to a point of new life, coming up out of what looks just totally dead, the same thing's going to happen to people here as that water flows out of us, so to speak. That when we're squeezed, abundant life comes out of us that helps them to see Jesus in a way that they never would have otherwise. And that's what we're called to. And that's why, having that deep relationship with Jesus is so important. And that's why I need to remember that even when I'm sitting in a car and people are doing annoying things to me, Jesus still loves that person. And it doesn't matter whether they can hear me or not. Where's my heart attitude toward them?
Okay, well, that's convicting, and that's another blog post.
That's another one, yeah. Chuck and his drive home journey.
We're just taking notes on all the things we'll be talking about next week. Thank you so much, though. As always, it's very helpful to see things from a different angle, from insightful ways that you can word them, and I always appreciate those gifts you bring to us. So thank you. And thanks for listening. If you would like to hear more podcasts and Sunday teachings from our Sunday gatherings, you can go ahead and subscribe to this feed. You can also find links to these and to former blog posts and future blog posts on rollinghills.org/worship. Follow RH Worship on Instagram. There's also links to those in there. Thank you so much, Chuck.
I'm glad to be here with you, Jazzy. Thanks.
I'm so happy to be here with you. It was a great day. Thank you. Have a great week.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.